the Alberta NDP was the only opposition party in the country to see COVID as an opportunity for partisan division rather than social cohesion. We all know that had they been in office over the past 20 months, Alberta would have been in a hard Australian-style lockdown with constant closure of schools, businesses, and places of worship. The human cost of that would be incalculable. On the other end of the spectrum, we all know people who wanted us to just let it rip, to take little or no precautions, to substitute slogans for action. But there is no doubt that that approach would have ended in catastrophe with overwhelmed hospitals and thousands more deaths. None of this has been easy for us as Conservatives.
Adam Sos here for Rebel News, and later today we will have a full video featuring all of the content, but we wanted to bring you some highlights of Jason Kenney's address to the UCP AGM here. So we're going to jump straight to those highlights now.
Wow, thank you so much. Isn't it great to have the Conservative family all together back in one room again? It is so great to see you folks, all of you friends from across this great province. And I have to just pause to say, the board was still debating a few weeks ago whether we should be doing this online or in person. And we wondered whether enough people would actually come in person. This is an overflow crowd. That is a sign of the strength of Alberta's Conservative movement. Thank you. Friends, we Albertans have been through our own time of great adversity. For 5 years, we struggled through economic decline and stagnation, prolonged and deepened by the job-killing policies of the Notley-Trudeau alliance. People had lost their homes, their businesses, and many had given up on Alberta altogether, picking up and leaving the province. Then we were sideswiped by the triple whammy that no one saw coming. The worst public health crisis in a century, the deepest global recession since the 1930s, and the biggest collapse in energy prices ever. This crisis challenged each and every one of us deeply. We mourn the lives of those that have been lost. We regret how COVID has dislocated our lives, separated us from loved ones, thrown many into despair, and caused so much incalculable damage. Let's not sugarcoat it. Some of that damage has been inflicted on our government and our party. Like every government in the world, we have sought to lead through COVID by trial and error, often faced with only bad choices. We've been in uncharted territory, combating an ever-changing viral disease that is lethal. We have made mistakes in the process, and as Premier, I must take responsibility for that. But let me tell you, from the bottom of my heart, that our government has always strived to find the right balance. Our goal from the beginning has been to protect the healthcare system from being overwhelmed while minimizing the damaging effects of restrictions. Unfortunately, the debate over COVID has been polarizing, probably more so in Alberta than anywhere in Canada. From day one, the Alberta NDP was the only opposition party in the country to see COVID as an opportunity for partisan division rather than social cohesion. We all know that had they been in office over the past 20 months, Alberta would have been in a hard Australian-style lockdown with constant closure of schools, businesses, and places of worship. The human cost of that would be incalculable. On the other end of the spectrum, we all know people who wanted us to just let it rip, to take little or no precautions, to substitute slogans for action. But there is no doubt that that approach would have ended in catastrophe with overwhelmed hospitals and thousands more deaths. None of this has been easy for us as Conservatives. We place a high value on freedom and on personal responsibility. And I consider it one of our province's great strengths that we have so many Albertans who jealously guard their liberties and distrust government overreach. But I also believe that the dignity of the human person, the sanctity of human life, and the need to protect the vulnerable are also deeply conservative values. Conservatives understand that we are not islands unto ourselves, that we have obligations to one another through society. Now, I'm going to be blunt. I know that many of you are angry with me and our government for having introduced public health restrictions at various times throughout COVID. I get it. I really do. I hear you, and I do so respectfully. It is no secret that these views have been strongly expressed in our caucus. But please hear me. If we had not made tough decisions, for example, in September, there is absolutely no doubt that we would have exceeded the total possible capacity of our hospitals to provide critical care. I was days away from having to authorize critical care triage protocols. Bluntly, that means pulling life support from some people and denying life-saving care to others. The very thought of that filled me with dread. As I said at the time, I don't care what the political consequences are. I cannot and will not let that happen. We cannot and will not let that happen. Albertans have once again risen to the challenge and together have brought this wave under control. But the people who deserve our greatest gratitude are our frontline healthcare workers. I see some of them in this room, and many of them have done their jobs under unthinkable pressure over much of the past 20 months. They have been truly Alberta strong. So please stand and join with me in saluting Alberta's fantastic frontline healthcare workers for all that they do. None of us imagined 20 months ago that COVID would still be affecting our lives so profoundly today. While we cannot say for certain what the future holds, we must do everything possible to manage risk while getting on with life. And we are developing a strategy to do just that. This includes continued rollout of our successful vaccine program. It includes Minister Cotbeen's work to expand intensive care capacity in our healthcare system. It includes much wider availability of rapid testing across the province, and it includes earlier and more widespread use of therapeutics like monoclonal antibody treatments, plus other drugs as soon as they are approved. Together, we are overcoming this time of trial and emerging from it stronger than ever. As soon as our government took office in the spring of 2019, we began laying the building blocks of our economic recovery through the elimination of the NDP's job-killing carbon tax, Bill number 1, through the job creation tax cut, which has given Alberta one of the most attractive tax rates for new investment in any place in North America, through the through the Red Tape Reduction Action Plan, through which we've already eliminated, get this, we don't celebrate it enough, we've already eliminated 20% of the regulatory burden on Alberta's economy, cutting 120,000 rules. We've gone from an F to an A on the CFIB's Canadian Red Tape Report Card. We rebalanced Alberta's labour legislation. We repealed the Bill 6 NDP attack on our farmers by passing the Farm Freedom and Safety Act. We're implementing our Fairness for Newcomers action plan to help new Canadians get to work at their skill level to achieve their dreams and contribute fully to our prosperity. We created the Indigenous Opportunities Corporation, which is helping First Nations become not just participants, but owners of major resource projects to move their people from poverty to prosperity, which is the great moral cause of our time. We brought in an energy-only market. We did away with all the NDP power subsidies and their carbon tax and their micro-regulation. We brought in a real market approach, just about the only one in North America, which has resulted in $5 billion in power production investments and the fastest-growing renewable sector in Canada. We brought in the Skills for Jobs strategy, and all of this stuff was in our platform that you informed as grassroots members. We brought in the Skills for Jobs strategy, which is increasing support for skilled trades and practical learning to better prepare young Albertans for the jobs of the future, because, you know, as I always say, we Conservatives believe that a trade certificate has every bit as much value, merit, and worth as a university degree. We have the second fastest job creation record in Canada this year. 65,000 new jobs created just in the last 3 months. 90,000 since the beginning of this year. Unemployment down by nearly half a percentage point last month. We replaced all the jobs lost since the beginning of COVID. And get this, we are within a month or two of fully recovering where our economy was at before the disaster of the Notley-Trudeau alliance in 2015. Let me tell you one of my favorite stats that says everything you need to know about Alberta. And it's this. Last year, in the midst of what I call a double recession, the COVID recession and the energy price collapse, you would think that Albertans would be filled with despair. But instead, what is our greatest asset? It's the entrepreneurial culture of our people. And we saw that last year. I see Brett Wilson clapping. We saw that a great Alberta entrepreneur. We saw that last year with the highest number of business and corporations in the history of our province. Where else in the planet would people, when faced with a double whammy recession, would go out and start a new business? I'll tell you where. In Alberta, the home of free enterprise. And here's another one that I love. You know, all the clever people, the Laurentian elites, the NDP, their friends in the Trudeau Liberal government, you know, all of them have been telling us, lecturing us Albertans, that oil and gas is over, it's a legacy industry, why don't you stubborn Albertans move on already, wake up and smell the coffee. You know, they were telling us that for years and years and years. And now what do we see? The most remarkable, dynamic, and I believe durable recovery of this country's largest industry with strong and abiding commodity prices. Folks, what is this telling us? As there is an emerging global shortage of energy around the world, that Alberta is there to provide that energy. And we will not relinquish global energy markets to the world's worst regimes, to the Saudis, the Venezuelans, and the Russians. We will be there as that ethical supplier of energy for years and years and years to come. And I hope Rachel's not watching, because I'm just about to spoil her day with this stat. Last month, we produced, shipped, and sold more Alberta oil than at any time in our history. We've seen the completion of Line 3 replacement, and TMX is on track. And let me pause there as well to send a message to our friends in the United States. You know, we had President Biden vetoed the Keystone XL pipeline, which would have safely delivered 840,000 barrels a day of responsibly produced Alberta energy to U.S. markets. He vetoed that in January, and now he is begging and pleading with the OPEC dictatorships and Putin's Russia to increase production and shipments to the United States. He's pleading with developed countries to open their strategic petroleum reserves. He's lifted sanctions on Russia, building their gas pipeline to Western Europe to dominate strategically Western European energy interests. He's lifting sanctions on American investment in offshore Venezuelan heavy oil development. You know, President Biden, we Albertans have a message for you. If you don't have enough oil, we Albertans are happy to help out. Approve the Keystone XL pipeline. It's not complicated. And by the way, did you know the Keystone XL pipeline, it was going to deliver 840,000 barrels a day of energy produced at the world's highest environmental, human rights, and labor standards? But today, the United States is importing 840,000 barrels of dirty conflict oil from Putin's Russia. It doesn't make any sense, but we won't relent. We will continue to fight for common sense in global energy markets. Many more major investments are close to landing. And none of this is happening by accident. Friends, there's one simple message in all of this. Alberta is back. Alberta is rising. Alberta is on a roll. So friends, all together, what I'm saying is promises made and promises kept. We still have more work to do, and that is where we must focus on the next 18 months. Now, as I close, let me say, we all know that there will be a leadership review vote next spring, and I want you to know, I welcome that. I embrace that opportunity for accountability. I have tried imperfectly from the beginning of the Unite Alberta movement to offer my own background in a spirit of servant leadership. And ultimately, the members of this party will decide what they want to do. Whether or not you want leadership renewal will be your decision next spring. I just have one request for each and every one of us, which is between now and then, let us focus our efforts and our attention on the people's business, on the priorities of Albertans. We have some internal differences. Every Big Tent political party does and always will. But let us address and resolve those internal differences internally, because the public wants to see parties and government focused not on internal party business, but on the public's priorities, on the crisis that we are facing, on economic recovery. I believe that at the next election, if we continue with the momentum that we have in this province, Albertans will look at the strongest economic record in the Federation, the strongest economic growth in Alberta in over a decade. They will look at incredible job creation and new investment. They will see a government that has kept its commitments to make life better for Albertans, to fight for a fair deal, to focus on jobs, the economy, and pipelines. And if we can stick to the things that we were sent to Edmonton to do, I believe we will be favorably judged by Albertans. But let us focus on the people's business, and let us all be united and resolved in our belief in the future of this province. So many of Alberta's critics have been kicking us while we were down. So many of those who have benefited from our prosperity and generosity have criticized this province at every turn. But I say to those critics, Alberta is back. Alberta is on the rise. Alberta is on a roll. And with your continued support, I believe that we will move forward in the renewal of this province as a great land of hope, opportunity, and prosperity for decades to come. God bless you, and God bless Alberta. Thank you very much.
Well, there you have it from Jason Kenney, his address to the United Conservative Party AGM. The consensus from people that we're speaking with here is that he started off strong and made some admissions and acknowledgements that meant something, but he quickly dropped into effectively listing achievements. There were numerous rounds of applause and ovation from portions of the room. Other portions of the room remained seated, clearly representing the fact that there is a strong divide here. Overall, we can't say that the speech was a failure or a success. Very much mixed reviews. As always, I want to thank you all for tuning in. For Rebel News, I'm Adam Sos. We're happy that we were able to bring you some highlights from Jason Kenney's speech, and later today, as we mentioned, we're going to bring you a full video featuring the other side of the story. We count on your support to be able to get out here and cover these events. If you want to chip in, you can help out at realreporters.ca.